Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
On your Daily Detroit, we update you with what's happening locally with the coronavirus. I'm Jair Stays. It's Wednesday, April 8th, 2020, and the windows are open at the North End studio.
And I'm Sven Gustafson from my socially distanced Ferndalian Hunker Bunker. I love the term Hunker Bunker, Jair, I just got to say, but that's another story altogether. Let's get right to it.
First, the numbers. The state of Michigan now has 20,346 confirmed coronavirus cases and 949 fatalities. There were more than 5,800 cases in the city of Detroit and 251 deaths. Southeast Michigan continues to be the epicenter of the epidemic in the state, with more than 4,000 cases in Oakland County, 3,800 cases in the rest of Wayne County, and more than 2,600 confirmed cases in Macomb County.
The city of Detroit's drive-through coronavirus testing is ramping up. The city says they're now processing 900 people each day at the former State Fairgrounds site. That's on Woodward, just south of 8 Mile. The goal is to hit 1,000 patients a day for Monday. When we first started talking about this operation, the city's original target was to do 400 tests per day, so they're exceeding the target. One area of frustration for many has been the difficulty in getting a prescription for a test. The state now has loosened the requirements so that you don't have to go through the cumbersome patient under investigation process if you're using a lab test.
With that, the mayor said that the city's goal is to get every single person who is showing symptoms tested right away. One of the big challenges that has faced Detroit is that the public service departments have been hit hard by the virus. The Detroit police have released some latest numbers. There are now 170 DPD officers that have tested positive, 52 fire department workers, 369 are currently quarantined, but there is good news at the end of this. More than 400 have returned back to work. The city is saying that staffing levels are coming back to normal, which is a great sign. 26 more deaths have been reported in the city since yesterday, which is not good, but the story is not all bad. Here is a clip of Mayor Mike Duggan today.
We're seeing the beginning of a glimmer of light. And so those who are tracking the number know that on Sunday, we had more than 30 deaths in the city. On Monday, 29. On Tuesday, 25. And today, 26. That is a large number, but it's not growing, it's not doubling. We are seeing the line, the curve, beginning to flatten out.
All right, Jair. So good, positive development overall. I think I saw that the total number of new cases was the smallest in terms of growth in more than a week. This is like statewide I'm talking about, so that's good. But this is nowhere near over yet. It would be very premature to declare victory over this. People still need to, keep up the stay at home and the sacrifices and everything in order to keep the curve down and keep everybody safe, including themselves.
Yeah, social distancing is super important. It's one of the things in my own neighborhood looking around I want to see more of. One thing I did notice is that it seems as if the city has removed the basketball rims around town. So that's something to discourage people from getting together. Because after all, a game like basketball is not something you want to be doing during the situation.
No, I mean, coughing or sneezing or whatever on a basketball and passing that to somebody else. I mean, even if you're somehow maintaining social distances, it seems kind of fraught with risk.
The Rona is spreading. This shit is no joke. It's no time to work or roam. The way you can fight it is simple, my friends. Just stay the at home.
There's progress update on the plans from FEMA and the state of Michigan to convert the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi into a field hospital for coronavirus patients. The 250,000 square foot facility will be able to handle 1,000 patients when complete. This is the second field hospital underway in the region after the TCF Center, aka COBO, and more sites are under consideration as needed.
The coronavirus crisis is going to blow a huge hole in the city of Detroit's budget. In a press briefing, Mayor Mike Duggan said that the shortfall this year could be around $100 million. That's a huge blow to a city that recently emerged from bankruptcy.
Part of the issue is the amount of money the city has to spend to address the coronavirus. The other part, the city's largest source of revenue is the 3 casinos, which are all closed right now. Unlike other cities that have property taxes as their main source of revenue, Detroit is very reliant on the $600,000 per day, and that's not an exaggeration, in gaming taxes. The administration warned there will need to be cuts in the future to offset all this lost revenue, just when we are going to need city services the most in the recovery process.
You know, Sven, I note here that this situation is not unique to Detroit. I kind of pulled it out because it's a large city and it's something that everyone can understand. But cities and states across the country are going to experience massive budget shortfalls and service cuts without an aid package. I don't think people realize that if you're a city or a county or a state, you can't run a deficit budget. You can't infinitely loan money or print money like the feds can. So there are going to be some really tough decisions to make unless Congress takes action.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to be living with, downstream effects of coronavirus long after the pandemic, danger subsides.
The coronavirus is taxing the health system in more ways than one. Thousands of employees of Detroit area hospital systems are falling ill to the pandemic. Bridge Magazine reported Monday that there are around 1,500 workers, including 500 nurses at Beaumont Health, who have symptoms consistent with COVID-19. Meanwhile, Henry Ford Health System says between 600 and 700 workers had tested positive for coronavirus. Beaumont requires workers who exhibit symptoms to stay home for 7 days and be free of symptoms before returning to work. Sven, there is some big news around the automotive industry, especially around one of our local automakers that's a little bit smaller, but making a big splash.
Yeah, so the first news here is concerns Rivian. This is the company that's based in Plymouth. We went out there and, of course, did an episode, I guess that was last year. They were planning to start production at their big factory. They bought an old Mitsubishi plant in central Illinois, and they were planning to start production later this year. But they just told the Chicago Tribune that the plant's been closed. Rivian, like all the other automakers, has shut down all of its facilities. Everybody's working remotely. And this is happening while they're trying to get the plant retooled. So the launch of production is now going to be moved back to 2021. The former Mitsubishi plant down there in Normal, Illinois, this is about 2 hours southeast of Chicago, is going to build both the R1T pickup truck and the R1S SUV that Rivian has designed. And it's also got contract from Amazon to build 100,000 delivery vans, electric delivery vans, using Rivian's platform, as well as an EV, an electric vehicle for Lincoln, the luxury arm of Ford Motor Company that's not due until 2022.
All right. And then there's other news in regards to ventilators. I know, Sven, it seems like this is a topic that follows you wherever you go, man.
I've been writing a lot about ventilators lately, for sure. So basically the news here today, GM, as we've talked about on the show a few times now, is teaming with a Washington State manufacturer called Ventec Life Systems to build a version of that company's ventilator units. These are, critically needed medical devices to help the most seriously stricken coronavirus patients continue to breathe. The news here today is that the federal government announced a contract today worth about $490 million for GM to start production of these ventilator units at a plant in Indiana. The terms call for 30,000 ventilators by the end of August, including about 6,100 by June 1st. All of these ventilator units are going to go to the Strategic National Stockpile, and there's been some discrepancy over who exactly gets claims to all the equipment in that stockpile, but that's a whole other story. I'm not going to get into that. What's interesting, though, about GM, getting into making ventilators for coronavirus patients is that neither GM nor Ventec, the company whose ventilators they're building, are going to be taking a profit on this. GM says that most of the contract with the Health and Human Services Department will be covering the costs for retooling its plant down in Indiana and for the costs of the ventilators themselves. Production of these units kicks off next week. And in one final auto-related news bit, Ford will be using a fleet of its idled shuttle vans to support 5 restaurants in Southwest Detroit by offering free delivery service to local residents. Ford is teaming with the Southwest Detroit Business Association, which identified restaurants that don't have relationships with delivery services like DoorDash. The restaurants are Antojitos El Catracho, El Asador, Flowers of Vietnam, High Grade Deli on Michigan Avenue, and Rincon Tropical. The delivery service runs Wednesday and Thursday for dinner and Friday through Sunday for lunch and dinner for residents in 3 Southwest Detroit zip codes.
Little Caesars says it's donating 1 million free pizzas to healthcare professionals and first responders across the country. The effort rolled out Tuesday at the Detroit Medical Center. Customers can also use the Little Caesars app to send a pizza to healthcare workers or police and firefighters in their neighborhood as well.
Let's go! Let's go, Kroger! Let's go! Let's go!
Grocery giant Kroger is further limiting the number of people who can be in their stores. The new restrictions from the company say that they'll let in 1 customer for every 120 square feet of store space. That'll cut the store capacity in half. Kroger has 120 stores in Michigan.
Jared, this just seems like this is going to be kind of our future for a while. You know, fewer people allowed in public places and stores. Stores lowering their people capacity, those kind of things. I keep thinking about this extraordinary time in history that we're living through, and I keep thinking in terms of like a photographer about images that I feel like are going to define this whole stay-at-home lockdown period, of coronavirus pandemic for history, for years from now when we look back on this. Things like when you see people standing in lines, 6 feet apart from each other outside of grocery stores, or I live right off of, as do you. We both live right off of Woodward Avenue. What Woodward Avenue looks like nowadays during rush hour, which is like, it's like this weird ghost town. There's going to be some really incredible, I think, images that come out of this whole thing.
Riders of DDOT buses in Detroit are now being offered surgical masks as protection against transmission of the coronavirus. They'll be available from a dispenser near the door at the rear of the buses to avoid contact with the driver. Riders are asked to touch only the mask that they're taking. The city expects to distribute 20,000 masks. The move follows recent guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that recommend use of masks covering the mouth and nose to anyone out in contact with other people. Last week, a DDOT bus driver who had complained about being coughed on by a passenger died of coronavirus complications. I'd also add that the mayor shares that the uptake on this has been pretty good, and it's something that seems to be popular with riders already.
Yeah, I think you'd be crazy not to take one if you're going to get on a bus, if you need to get on a bus to go anywhere.
All right, before we let you go, here are a couple Detroit history facts from Ken Coleman. You can follow him at HistoryLivesDET on Twitter. First, on this date in 1956, the last of Detroit's streetcars that once served the whole city rolled down Woodward. That was 64 years ago, Sven. 64 years. Crazy to think about. Yes, the Q line, I guess, technically counts as a streetcar, but it has a super limited service area.
It's also completely shut down indefinitely right now. So, yeah. Second thing, 141 years ago today, the city purchased Belle Isle from Barnabas Campo. He's the son of Joseph Campo. Campo is a name you'd probably know as a street name if you've ever been to Hamtramck or the city's Near East Side. The purchase price for Belle Isle? $200,000.
Wow. First off, great deal. Secondly, I'm a map guy, and it is fascinating. Sven, have you ever dug into the old maps of the city and seen kind of how Belle Isle has changed over the years? It is so sculpted by humans, especially the footprint today.
Yeah, they've reclaimed a lot of land from, I'm not sure where, but to add on to acreage on the island for sure.
Well, what I've been told is with some of this was digging out the basements of factories and skyscrapers and such to kind of fill in some areas. Because, that whole point past where the Scott Fountain is, that's newer land. And then you've got the area on the other side past where the roads are. That's all added land. It's interesting to see how much it has been changed over the last, century and a half.
Indeed, and as you and I had discussed recently, I was on the island not too long ago, just a month or so ago, and it is looking really swampy over there everywhere with the high water levels on the river these days, and that's a big concern.
Well, we are done for today. Thanks for listening to Your Daily Detroit. I'm Jairus Days.
And I'm Sven Gustafsson. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together. In fact, the faster we all take this seriously and make sacrifices, the sooner we'll actually see you around Detroit.
I can't wait to meet you at the bar, Sven.
No doubt, Jer. Ventilators?
I didn't say that, but I should have.
Like you did. I wouldn't put it past you.
Do this ventilator.